Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest Vivianne Nantel, and she's here to share with us her new book, Becoming the Light. Realize your true enlightened nature. Now, Vivianne graduated from San Francisco State University, and she's a published writer and poet. Her work has appeared in Yoga Magazine, Poet's Paper, the National Literary Journal, and Animal Wellness Magazine, among many others. Now, Vivianne also was a visionary artist and prolific painter whose artwork has been exhibited in museums, fine art galleries, and private and corporate collections. She stopped working as a fine artist after going through her cancer journey in 2007 and 2008. Articles about Vivianne's work has been published in the San Francisco Chronicle, the Independent Florida Sun, and Alaska World Magazine. She has been interviewed on various television talk shows, including Earth Advocate, Bridging Heaven and Earth, and has appeared in the documentary film Harp Seal by the Sea Shepherd Conservation Society. So let's welcome to the show Vivianne Nantel.
Thank you so much for having me. That's what a pleasure and an honor. Thank you, Marianne.
Oh, what a joy it is to have you here. And I just can't wait to talk about your book, Becoming the Light. I mean, it's getting such rave reviews. And, I have to ask, what was your inspiration behind writing this book? Because it's so deep and there's so much to it. And gosh, it is a book that people can just pick up and read over and over and over again.
Oh, before I answer your question, I'd love to mention the subtitle, if it's fine with you, because
yes.
It's Becoming the Light, Realize Your True Enlightened Nature, because the subtitle reveals a lot about what is the core essence of the book, and it's all about tapping into our ultimate potential, which most people are not aware. So my inspiration was, I always knew since in my late 20s I was going to write a book, but I did not know this was going to be such a major book and that kind of book. But I've always felt, when I was a young girl, a little girl, there was something different about my being. Not special, but different. And I realized later, as the years went by, is that I was a seeker. I had a deep longing to know the truth. So, and I was, in a way, if I may say, in comparison to Gautama the Buddha, when he started awakening and looking and wanting to look for the truth, one of the first things you realize about suffering, how people suffer and how we all decayed and we died. And so that was one of my inspirations. I don't know if I would call it inspiration because it was an inner knowing. I don't think there was a specific inspiration. It was an inner knowing that this book was going to come out at one point, and witnessing my own suffering and pain and wanting to know what was beyond the blue sky and wanting to help people. Most importantly, wanting to help people. Because I felt my story is so phenomenal, Marianne, that I want people to know that if I did it, everybody can do it. It's nothing special. We all have it within ourselves. Our true ultimate nature. We could call it the divine nature. We could call it the Buddha within ourselves, Buddha, which means just awaken, and wanting to help the animal also, because I was witnessing through my awakening the incredible suffering the animal endure in many different sectors, and how planet Earth is suffering also. So, and I had to write it. I had no choice. It was a calling.
Yeah. Well, and I know you share in your book, you had I don't want to really call it a battle, but you had cancer that you overcame, and it's through the work that you did. And, a lot of people, when they look at disease and illness, they think that they have to, and we're not telling people not to, but they think that conventional medicine is the only place to go. And a lot of times they forget the spiritual aspect of why disease and illness has arisen in the body.
Most of the time, people absolutely say it so truthfully. Yeah, most people forget they have their, inner power within, and they forget the spiritual aspect of it. And the other aspect of what you just mentioned, they also go straight to allopathic medicine. It's not just allopathic medicine, because I work also with alternative, holistic, but most importantly, I can see that as a fact because I have seen it over and over. My friends who have passed away from breast cancer, and I had many while I was going through my own journey, and I see it also with other disease, is that people forget that within our own being that we are divine. We have that source inside. We're part of, I always love to use that beautiful metaphor, like a unique wave of the divine ocean of love. The wave is not, even though it's unique, it has its own unique form, meaning in the sense an entity, yet the wave cannot exist without being the ocean. You see, when the wave retrieves to the ocean, realize I am the full ocean. So we have that power. The power, so would you rather be, the wave cannot exist without the ocean. It's the same thing us. We are all interconnected. We are part of the source. We cannot be separated from the source. We have that illusion. So that inner power is there. And what I mean by that is how we can work, of course, with God, Allah, Brahma, whatever, by so many thousands of names we call, the absolute truth, the source. We're never alone. We can work with ascended master and they are celestial beings. All my journey, I work a lot with ascended master and celestial being. And when you are in a state of complete abandonment and faith and receptivity and openness and humbleness, it's phenomenal what can occur. I mean, miracle. I'm a walking miracle, big walking miracle, because what I went through, I almost died of an anaphylactic shock reaction to the chemotherapy. And what occurred there, organizing, I don't want to tell the stories in my book. It's too long also to tell. But that I stay alive, and what happened there with Jesus Christ, it was so phenomenal. And I'm not saying that in a religious way. I'm saying that on an energetic, spiritual way. And doing a lot of visualizing, and I tell about my visualization technique there, what I was doing specifically on a daily basis, not just the yogic practices I was doing of pranayama. That was part of my healing, because that's one aspect also people forget. The breath in the yogic tradition, because I'm a yogini and a mystic, and I was in past life, I have recollection of some of my reincarnation, and even though I didn't believe in it when I was younger, and I had a lot of doubts, but through my spiritual awakening, my journey, too many phenomenal things happened and I saw, vision of my past life. But to go back to the healing process is, we have a subtle body. In the yogic tradition, it's very clear, explained in depth what is the subtle body, how it's made up. The chakra. A lot of people think we have only 7 chakra, but we have 114 chakra. How to spin them, how to work with the prana. Prana is the life force energy, and that's God itself. Nothing could exist in the physical realm, because if prana did not exist, it's intelligent energy. Everything is energy. So the energetic body that we have in our subtle body is what sustains us, that what keep us in the physical body. And so most people, when they go through their either a major depression, which I did, and I attempted to commit suicide, which is all part of my journey, and that the fact that I came out of there, it's another miracle, but we can discuss that a little later. But just to finish what I was saying is, people are not aware of the things I talk about, doing yogic practices, working with the breath, working with the prana, to one of the most important things as a yogi, and it doesn't matter which religious background you come from, socioeconomic background, gender, all those identifications have nothing to do with who you are. When you can break free from those limitations and you really want to work and know the truth and discover your inner power, then I highly suggest that you get initiated and learn some great, ancient, powerful yogic practices, spiritual practices, and especially what we call kriya. Kriya, there are all different kind of kriya, and kriya means complete action. So I'm sharing that now because I want our listener to know that I was doing a lot of kriya while I was going through my cancer journey. I call it the cancer journey. And considering that it destroys so many of my organs, going through the anaphylactic shock reaction, the recovery, the fact that I stay alive was beyond a miracle. But the damage that occurred in my system was so huge, and I won't go into it, and what really saved me was all of those things that I'm talking about. And this is going on 12 years ago. And all through going that, I saw all my girlfriends dying. They could not sustain it because they were not doing what I was doing. And even though I tried to help some of them, but, most people, when they go through a major crisis like that, they get jaded. They don't want to hear. Or changing diet also was another important thing for many people. I was already pretty much a vegan, and I was eating a lot of raw food, and I started doing in my recovery, I started doing a lot of green juice, keeping my body alkaline. So there are so many things, so many things in my journey that the fact I'm still here today, and ultimately the grace of God. And like I said, I see people dying all the time, and one wonder why one is surviving and one is not, or one is thriving. And despite all the things I'm telling you, some of the people, they might not do everything that I've done, but they might eat a lot of raw food, vegan raw food, keeping their body alkaline, and they still don't make it. They might do, like, for instance, one of my girlfriends, she did everything. Her stage of cancer was less advanced than mine, and she ended up dying the following year, and she did all the things you could imagine, and nothing worked. It goes back to the first point I was saying in the beginning, is when you realize your true nature and you take the divine, which is, we are that. We make that connection, we have that realization, we stop that separation, then we have the power to heal ourselves. And ultimately, it's grace, like I said, grace of the divine.
Yeah. Well, and do you feel that, because you talk about people getting stuck, and, part of it could be their path, and maybe they're not ready, and I know in your book you talk about self-imposed barriers, and I'd love for you to share with our listeners about that, and if you feel that could be part of the reason that some people survive and others don't.
Oh, absolutely. Two of the biggest barriers, and so glad you brought this up, because it's so important and it's so subtle, and most people are not aware of that, Marianne. One of the first major barrier or boundaries or limitation, because I always use this term, putting yourself in a small, teeny cage, and that's what people do. Just the fact people develop mindset. Mindset is it's an enemy in some ways, because it keeps you in that box. So, and most people are not aware they have mindset. They're really not. Unless they practice mindfulness and they're really paying attention to the way they interact with other people, how they think, and also it takes courage and humbleness to be able to recognize, okay, to see, I got this mindset, this pattern. And people who have mindset and pattern, they tend not to be open because they don't want to hear. Because it hurts people. It hurts their ego. And again, ego does not really exist, but in reality, when you look for ego, there is not such a thing as ego. But it goes back to personality. It goes back to all accumulation, the brainwashing, the conditioning of so many decades of the day that you came on the planet. All that was inculcated to you unconsciously by by society, by parents, by religion, by media, by government. That's not who we are. Those are the barriers I'm talking about. This is how people form mindset. They form opinions. Opinion and mindset, unfortunately, they don't serve us. And if one is smart enough to learn from the wise one and humble enough to say, I'm tired of being trapped in my cage. I want to get rid of my mindset. Because a mindset, I can give you an example. Thinking like, maybe one small example. Thinking allopathic is the only way to take care of a disease. But normally a mindset is something that is repetitive in your life, that it's like a shadow, you're not aware of it. And it really controls your life because you become like a puppet. You are controlled by your mindset. The other major limitation I've seen let's go back for a moment, mindset. Mindset, thinking that, oh, I'm too old, I can't do that. Oh, I'm too young, I can't do that. Or I'm not smart enough, I'm not beautiful enough, I'm not worth enough. All of this, when you when you extract the essence of a mindset, what you look at it is you see certain characteristics of the personality of the person, such as a person who is rigid in their way of thinking, a person that is not open to learn and to grow and wanting to know, a person that is not humble. You see, and if you're capable of to go inside and do self-introspection and help yourself through all kind of tools and yogic practices, and yogic practices are great to destroy mindset because it works on the deep, deep level, on the unconscious level, and on the subtle body. And also, a lot of people are not aware unless you're on the spiritual path, and like I have been a path of self-realization and enlightenment, that all this conditioning for so many decades, it's anything that happened to us, even the physical drama and trauma of an accident, it's all recorded, imprinted in our cellular level. And in the yogic tradition, we call it samskara. And so when you do kriya, any kind of yogic practices that involve a powerful ancient technique with a kriya, it purified all those samskara. So that's why this is a powerful way to get rid of mindset, because it's hard for people to get rid of their mindset. They normally fall back to their default. Another major limitation is to identify yourself with all the things that we're not. And the thing we're not is we're not our gender, we're not our socioeconomic background, and we're not our ethnic background. We're not that. This is just on the social level here, so we can function here on the planet, but we're not that. And people make the mistake to identify, oh, I'm Muslim, or I'm a Jew. And when you identify yourself with all those things, is that you take on the whole culture, the whole thinking and the belief system of that identification, and it limits you completely. Consciously and unconsciously, it will limit you. And I see it over and over and over. As for me, when I grew up, that was not one of my limitations because I never associated myself with, I grew up as a Catholic. I never saw myself, because I embraced everyone. I always felt like I never saw people, oh, she's a Jew, or he's a Lebanese. I had friends from all around the world, and I love that. So that's a huge one, and it's even more difficult, this one, in some ways, because most people are not aware of it. They really so ingrained in their unconscious level from ancestor of limiting themselves into believing that's who they are.
Mhm. Yeah, and having that limiting belief.
Absolutely. Even saying I'm Buddhist is the same too. You know, identifying yourself with something is a limitation. You see, I love the Buddha's teaching. I love everything, and everything it belongs to me. I belong to everything. I don't identify. If I'm being asked, do you follow a religion? Or who are you? You know, are you Buddhist? You know, or are you Hindu? Or are you Christian? Because in my book I talk about everything. They are part of me. I'm part of them. We are one. There is no separation. I could say there's two ways to look at it. I could say I'm Buddhist, I'm Christian, I'm Muslim, I'm Jay, I'm Hindu, and yet I'm none of that. It's beyond that. Because the truth is beyond identification.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love how you shared that when we see these patterns that are arriving in our life, you know, that there's something to them, you know, and it's interesting because, you know, a lot of times you'll see people that either date the same type of person or feel like they get the same kind of lousy job with the mean boss or whatever the case is, and this pattern repeats and repeats over and over again until they wake up and say, wow, yeah, there's something going on here.
Yes, indeed. They attract it, and they repeat it, and ultimately, who is responsible? It's you, nobody else. And that's another thing I would tell you. That would be the third big limitation. And that's very subtle, Marianne, and most people don't see that. And it takes sometimes huge crisis in their life, huge suffering, to wake up and realize, I'm not a victim. You know, to wake up that you have inner power and you are responsible for your thoughts, your words, and your action and your life. Nobody else. So if you're falling into that pattern, you're attracting the wrong people in your life, the wrong friends, and the wrong lover, and the wrong job. When I mean there's no wrong and right, everything is relative, but I mean like that it doesn't suit you for your life, that it does not empower you. Because it's all about empowering. Nobody else is responsible than you. And then you need to really take a deep look at yourself and do self-introspection and seek help, because nobody's going to give it to you unless you ask, unless you have the longing and you really want to know. You really have to have that longing to know and say, hey, this is insane. I don't want to continue my life like this. Life is too short.
Yeah. You know, and it takes courage to do that reflection, you know, but what's scarier is having everything stay the same way.
Oh, my God, yes, definitely. It takes huge courage, and that's even writing this book was such a huge courage to bring this book. But, you know, because there is no ego here, there is no I mean, I could have had 1,001 reason not to write the book, and because it's not all sugar-coated, the book, you know, I'm telling the truth out it was, and I mean, there was an aspect of my being that really needed to be demolished and destroyed. I was willing. You have to be willing. Not only just courageous, but willing to be transformed. And to reveal what I reveal in this book, of course, there's other aspect I didn't reveal, but only because they are too sacred. It's nothing, it's just there's certain things you can't reveal. They're too sacred on the spiritual level. But what I reveal is so profound and tense, and aspect of my being where you can really see the character evolving, from darkness to light, on truth to truth, and ignorance to enlightenment. That has been my path. So in order to write a book like that, you really have to see the darkness in the book. You really have to see the untruth, and you really have to see the ignorance, and it's there. And so it takes great courage. And anyone who can surmount this courage inside themselves and feel humble and be willing, it's going to happen for sure. I can guarantee you that, because you cry, the cry of your soul and your spirit and your heart will be heard. Mm-hmm. Because we're not alone.
Yeah. Well, and you talk about in your book discovering our inner guru. Is that what you mean by that? Is really kind of diving in and then coming out on the other side?
The inner guru is, I use this term because when you are on the path of enlightenment, even though we all have the seat, it's not something that you become. You don't become enlightened. It's a realization. It's an awakening. It's actually the opposite of becoming. It's unloading all the layers and the layers and going to the core essence of who you are. The core essence, you could say, is the Buddha, the awakened one. You could say the inner guru, because when you're on that path, it's crucial to have a sat guru. A sat, S-A-T, G-U-R-U. A Sadguru is, in the yogic tradition, is one who is empowered to transmit Shaktipat. Shaktipat is a transmission of Shakti, of primordial divine energy, to awaken the Kundalini and going through the ascension, at the awakening ascension of the energy. I talk about that in depth, and I walk you through my journey. That comes like on the beginning of the second part of the book, because that's crucial. So that's why I use the term inner guru, because inner guru is a true Sadguru comes into your life when you're really truly ready to be demolished. Really, get rid of that personality, get rid of all that accumulation, that garbage that you're carrying that makes you suffering for so many decades. And the inner guru is, eventually the Sadguru is coming to bring the light, to shed the light, and to show you the way, and to empower you to find your own inner guru, because ultimately you don't need a guru for the rest of your life. Again, depending on each individual, where you are on your evolutionary process and depending on your karmic structure. But like in my case, for instance, I am my own inner guru. This is fully awakened into my being. Sadguru is just, it's not a relationship, it's just an instrument, it's an embodiment. It's a true, genuine Sadguru is an embodiment of the divine, of God. And it's not an intermediary at all, and it's just serve you there on the path to awaken that inner guru, so that you become that light. You become the light. So your inner guru is awakened. You could look at it, like I said earlier, you are the Buddha. That the Buddha's consciousness, the Christ consciousness, the Krishna consciousness, it's all the same consciousness. You could look at it in many different ways. So when you awaken your own inner guru, is you have gone through the whole Shakti Kundalini ascension, and you can operate. You have started to even develop some spiritual power. What we call in the yogic tradition CDs, and that's another subject, a fascinating subject on its own.
Well, I mean, there's so much to cover here, because you have so much. You're just like a wealth of information here and wisdom, and so it's such a delight to spend this time talking with you about this.
Oh, it's the same. It's such a great pleasure because I will say to you, most Sadhguru don't reveal some of the things I reveal because because they're acting as Sadhguru publicly in the world. And even with my own master, in a way, because I'm from a lineage of master, it's like my own master now is Sadhguru, not Satguru, Sadhguru, Sadhguru at Isha Foundation. And he's my latest one who came in my life, who kidnapped me from good, and I was so unexpected. But they're already in a power of, there's not a lot like in my case who have such an extraordinary life and what occur, that self-realization, that awakening, and then go out, write this kind of book. I think that's probably what I'm trying to say. And number two is, like Sadhguru, he doesn't talk too much about the Kundalini ascension and all that because so many big things happen around him, and sometimes they do that on purpose. They reserve themselves because they don't want to create any idea and thoughts in people's mind. However, I agree with that. However, I would say to you, and I have observed that because I know so many people, through the organization I've been with, especially within Isha, they get a lot of fear or confusion, or they run away and they're scared. They don't understand because they don't understand the spiritual knowledge that I'm giving in the book that a lot of those Sadhguru don't really bring. And to demystify not only what is yoga, that's done with Sadhguru, but I mean like when it comes to Kundalini and the spontaneous Kriya. When one goes through spontaneous Kriya, what occur, the phenomenon, like speaking in tongue, going into trance, into samadhi, they don't really explain that too much because they don't want to put anything in people's mind. But on the other hand, it doesn't serve in a way because I have people who are within those organizations, they come and ask questions because they don't understand, but it's normal. I think like Muktiyananda, Swami Muktiyananda, when he was alive from the Siddha Foundation, I never had the great honor and pleasure to be in his presence. He passed away. I think I was still living in Canada, but he was one who was not afraid. And he talked about even the blue pearl, and what it is. I experienced that, the blue pearl. I tell the story. And all those mysticism of the yogic tradition, it's not very much talked about among the Sadhguru to their disciple or devotee or student. And they do that on purpose. And I completely relate to that. But on the other hand, it leads a lot of people in deep confusion and even scare and run away. And I felt, for me, honestly, Marianne, if I was going to write that book, there is no way I could share my story without demystifying and explain those phenomena, because people would put incredible judgment and it would leave them completely baffled. They would not understand. So I felt, and even I quote Swami Muktananda at some parts, about what are spontaneous Kriya, what I experience, and state of samadhi, and what is the blue pearl, because those are important things to talk about, to understand. But I think probably what the Sadhguru thing is that they don't want to put this kind of idea because people they have big imagination, they start creating all kind of imagery or feverishness, wanting to have those experiences, and then it becomes a huge obstacle on the spiritual path. Mm-hmm. But in my case, to write Becoming the Light, Realize Your True Enlightened Nature, I had to explain that. I felt like it was crucial to demystify those phenomena.
On that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Vivianne Nantel about her new book, Becoming the Light. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, when you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 123 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
There are nearly 2 million Americans living with amputation. Many live right here in San Antonio. Becoming an amputee can be scary, frustrating, isolating, but there's no reason to feel alone. The San Antonio Amputee Foundation is here to help support you and guide you toward resources such as home and car modifications and even prosthetic limbs. For more information or to make a donation, visit saamputee.org. We'll help you live a full, active life, one step at a time. San Antonio Amputee Foundation, healing limbs, hearts, and souls.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with special guest Vivianne Nantel, and she's sharing with us her new book, Becoming the Light. Realize your true and light nature. Now, before we went for break, we were talking about how energy flows in the body. And in your book, you talk about the divine feminine energy Shakti. You brought that up a little bit earlier. I would love for you to share a little bit more about that for our listeners and what the Shakti energy encompasses.
That is such a huge subject, and in an interview like that, I'm a little careful what I say, because it's, in order for me to talk about Mahashakti, Maha means great, Shakti means empowerment, force. Those are words from the Sanskrit, one of the older language of of the world, where the Maharishi, through the ancient spiritual tradition of yogic, was transmitted like orally with Sanskrit. So I hesitate because it involved bringing some spiritual knowledge to understand that, because most people don't understand Shakti, but I'll share a few things. Shakti, it's the word used in Sanskrit in the spiritual yogic tradition. In other tradition, even religious tradition, they do exist. It's the same thing as Shakti, except, I know this might sound insulting and offending for Christian, please forgive me, but that's the truth. The Holy Spirit is the same as Shakti. I go in trance, I speak tongue exactly the same way that some Christian mysticists throughout history have gone saint. The same thing is the same energy. There's only one God. There's only one energy. It's all from the same source. Whatever words we use to identify that is the same thing. In Japan, they call it ki. In China, they call it chi. It has so many different names. It's the same thing. It's just energy. The world, the physical realm could not exist without Shakti. It's what, and in the yogic tradition, this is how it goes, and I'll tell it briefly. And you might not understand it. Don't worry. And it's not complicated. Is to create the physical realm, it takes two things. It takes energy and consciousness. It's the same. It comes from the same source. It's the source. So in the yogic tradition, when we say Shiva, it means that which that is not. We're not talking an Hindu god. We're talking about consciousness, universal light consciousness. Like I was saying, either Krishna consciousness, Mohammed consciousness, it's the same. So Shiva is consciousness, Shakti is energy, the same energy. Doesn't matter what is the tradition. We could call it whatever we want, but because we are humans, we need to speak in certain languages. We use one word. So Shiva, Shakti, when there are merge as one and they create this manifestation, this physical realm. And just consciousness would not bring about as the physical realm what we're experiencing. Everything in this physical realm is the grace of Shakti, is the grace of this divine universal energy. The animal have it, the plants, everything is life force energy of God, So we all have it within us, and we human beings, what we have in the Muladhara and the foundation chakra and the sacrum, it's the Kundalini. They view it as a serpent. It's just an iconography. It's just a symbol, like every religion or philosophy. But this is not a philosophy. This is a science. The Rishi looked at it as, they even call it the goddess, serpent goddess, because that energy, the way it is at the root of the Muladhara, looks like a snake curled up, quail. That's what it means, quail. So when it awakens, it goes up and pierces the chakra. And there's a lot of method for this to come about. And each time there is one of the 7 major chakras that open up one at a time. Like I said earlier, we have 14 to work with, but the major one are the 7 one, which I explain in depth, and I even quote Sadhguru on that and what happened at each chakra. And when Shakti, Kundalini, which are synonymous word, Kundalini, Shakti. But normally when you refer to Kundalini, we're referring more to the human being who has that Kundalini inside. So for most people, this is the treasure of life. This is the magnificence of being a human being, is that Kundalini there, awaiting to be awakened, that primordial energy that is sleeping. To awaken that takes a high voltage of energy, and that's what Sadhguru does, transmit Shakti about. And so, and through your own self-effort and doing Kriya, yogic practices, and meditation is very important, and there are many different kinds. Samyama is the most important in as far as what I've experienced on the path, and you'll understand later, but that's another subject of conversation. So, to answer, finishing your question, Marianne, is when Kundalini ascend, and this could be a process of many years, or it could accelerate, it could happen very fast, depending on the karmic structure of the person, depending who is your Sadhguru, and depending how open and receptive you are. It depends on your path. It depends on so many different element, I would say. And so when it pierces and it goes through the Swahasara, which is the 1001 lotus outside the physical body and the subtle body, when Shakti merge with Shiva there, that you are fully enlightened, that you have gone through the whole process of Kundalini ascension. And the reason why it's so important to awaken Shakti, Kundalini, within all of our being is that we are becoming self-realized. It's not a physical, there is aspect of it, but it's very energetic. You are vibrating on a much higher frequency. It's a completely different way of experiencing this physical realm. It's very, very different. And that's where you can tap into other dimension of reality to experience the beyond, going into samadhi and so many. And you see some of those things, like all the mysticism of the yogic tradition. You see that in the Buddhist tradition. You see that even in Christianity. In Christianity, they call it charism. And they have, again, all different names, but all those phenomena are all universal. What you talk about, psyche and spiritual power, what we call cities, all of this, it exists. It doesn't matter who we are, where we are living on the planet, they're there. It's sometimes they're used by other esoteric spiritual tradition with different names, but they all are universal. So ultimately, why it's so important that we go through this ascension is, of course, the more enlightened being we're going to have on the planet, the more the consciousness is expanded, the more we're going to treat Mother Earth very differently, how we're going to love each other, the compassion we're going to have for each other. Because when you start seeing yourself in every being that you go, every living being, you're going to behave different. You're going to experience this life, but also you're going to help. You know, if you see a suffering animal in front of your eyes, you're not just going to let it suffering. If it's an injured animal, you're going to rescue the animal. You're going to do a difference. You see what I'm saying? It raised the consciousness on our planet. And the more awakened beings we have on the planet, the more chances we can survive. And not only that we can stop all those wars that are happening and all the corruption and that patriarchal energy, society, not energy, but patriarchal mindset. That's a perfect one. That's one. Patriarchal mindset is probably the biggest limitation that you would see. Even in women, because one important thing I need to say, divine feminine energy has nothing to do with our gender, being feminine, being a female and being a woman's body, because we all have feminine and masculine energy within ourselves. That masculine energy is more of, in the universe, it's necessary also destroying. It's as a different purpose. Shakti is about creation, creating, nurturing, loving, embracing, benevolent. You know, it carries other different kind of value with it. And so if you look back, and I talk about that in depth in Becoming the Light, and that's a big of my suffering came a lot from the patriarchal mindset. It is a mindset. Even women today, you could see they have that mindset. And it's so deep entrenched into the unconscious mind, often they are not aware. Women today trying to compete, embracing such harsh masculine energy value, because they think this is how they can survive in the world we live in today. But that's not true. We all have it. And on the other hand, you could look at some, I have seen men who are, they're so in touch with their feminine energy. They're so loving and gentle and caring and compassionate and loving and nurturing. You know, they really, you could see that beautiful feminine. But the thing is, too much of one or the other is no good. And that's the whole thing in the yogic tradition. When you go to the spiritual Kundalini ascension, is you're fully in balance. You know, Shakti and Shiva has merged as one, and there is a sense of unity, of oneness. And it's not just physical, it's very metaphysical, and it's energetic, that you have broke free from those barriers, your energy. And people feel it around you. They feel that light. They might call it whatever name, but they will, anyone who is receptive, they will feel it. So that's why, so big my suffering when I was a child, because of this dysfunction. And my father was very much ruling the household with the patriarchal mindset. And he was really abusive, destroying. I mean, he would throw me on the wall like a baseball bat. And I woke up to that, and when I started studying and I read everything I read about the Western Hemisphere history, what occurred, I couldn't stop crying of listening to all what happened, you know, when they were burning women to the stake, you know, because they were very evolved. Well, I didn't read that in books, not that part, but all the wars and everything just to conquer, because the patriarchal mindset is all about conquering. It's all about possessing. It's all about destroying, wanting more. You know what I'm saying? It's very different than the feminine energy. And if you look back into the Neolithic time or a little bit later, there were a lot of tribes and matriarchal society where people were in touch with their feminine energy. They were worshiping the divine feminine energy. And again, not the female, but the divine feminine energy and of the source of God. And they live in harmony. They live in peace. And they live in community. They had a sense of belongingness, a sense of oneness. And even today, you can still see the patriarchal mindset very strongly. It might be subtle, but it's there. And that's causing a lot of suffering in people. And one last word on that, because I know I'm talking a lot now, because it's such a huge subject.
Not at all. I'm enjoying this conversation and hearing what you have to say on this topic. And I think a lot of our listeners want to hear you talk about this.
I'm glad you say that, because it's such a huge topic. And a lot of suffering comes from that, and it's all unconscious. I was wise enough to wake up and see it, but it is huge. I mean, you could see it right now with our government, you know, unfortunately. And you see it in other countries. I mean, where there is corruption, I will tell you, there's going to be power over. Power over is not inner power. They're very different. Power over is the patriarchal mindset, is wanting to conquer, wanting to corrupt, wanting to, is greedy. It comes from greed. It comes from ego, even though ego does not really exist, but per se. It comes from that sense of possessing, of wanting to have a control over. It's very dysfunctional. It comes from ignorance. And when I mean ignorance, Marianne, I mean ignorance of not knowing your true divine nature. You see, it's their energy. People who have power over, exert power over, either in government or in an industry or even anywhere. It could be a male or a female. Don't get me wrong. It's not just male associated. It's because their energy is very low. It's in their lower chakra. You know, it could be in the Muladhara or the Manipura or the Sahasrara, you know, in Swadhisthana, in the lower chakra, because they're not awakened. they're out of balance. They have too much of masculine energy. So that power over, it's all about conquering, like I said, processing, exploiting. Where you see that huge exploitation into like children trade, for example, or abuse in the slaughtering house, the incredible cruelty, horrific cruelty that you see in the animal kingdom, all comes from patriarchic mindset. If you would see someone who was in balance, you would not see that. There would be harmony, there would be peace. Animals would not be suffering. People would not be suffering. And a lot of suffering also, I would say a huge part of it is self-imposed. It's the mind. The mind creates huge, huge, huge suffering within ourselves. And I know that because I did it myself. I was pretty good at putting myself in a huge, major, severe depression, even though I was facing, when you read the book, I was facing huge trauma and huge tragedy, but it's how we go about. And that's why it's so important to awake, because our mind, if we leave it untrained, is our worst enemy. So that, combined with a patriarchal mindset energy still on our planet, we're not going to make it. The way things are going, I'm not pessimistic at all. I'm very optimistic. That's why I feel my work that's why I felt like I had to bring that story, because I hope many people will read it and will find transformation or help transform and feel empowered to change their life and wanting to explore the spiritual path, embark on the spiritual part. And if you are already on the spiritual path, to go deeper and to embrace the balance within themselves. And we definitely desperately need more divine feminine energy on our planet. Because not just for us human beings, but for the animals and for our survival.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, and what's really interesting, I mean, I read in your book that you could immediately see, even as a child, how that we were all equal, including the animals. And I loved how you talk about that, because a lot of people don't have that awareness at a very young age.
That was natural in my being. I was born with that. Well, even with people, I never saw, like my mother was always fascinated because I was the only one in my family that I would have. All my friends were all around the globe. I had Muslim friends. I had Arabic friends. I mean, I had Egyptian with Christian, Lebanese, Italian, I mean, you name it. I mean, Sudan, everywhere. And it was just natural because I grew up and I never saw discrimination. I always saw everyone. I was already seeing myself in them. There was no difference. I never saw color of skin. I never saw a man or a female. All I saw was just their spirit. That's all. And the animal is the same. When you bond with the animal, when you make that deep spiritual connection, the animal can be a big, huge gateway for the divine. It was for me. As a matter of fact, my first teacher was These Bees when I was a young adolescent, and I tell the story, and when he died, oh my God, he was such a great teacher for me. And because I saw God, I saw the divine in my cat, because again, there's no words that can describe that. It was just a natural phenomenon, because that's the truth. We all interconnected. There is no difference, and there's no there is no, what is the word I'm trying to find? Everything is equal. We all are God. Literally. We all are part of the source. And everyone plays an important part here on earth. And without each other, we cannot survive. We all need each other. We all are interdependently needing each other and that's actually in the Buddhist tradition, we call it like depending arising. It's like it cannot exist. We cannot exist. We're all interconnected. And so if we're all interconnected, how can we think the animals are inferior? It's impossible. They all play a role on the planet. Why the year? And I mean, beyond intellect, because that's the thing also. Intellect sometimes, it's a great instrument, but also it could really impede people on their spiritual path. But to my being, when I was a little girl, I felt the divine when I helped an animal because I needed so much love when I was a child. I felt so unloved. I felt like I didn't belong. And I had such a deep longing. And like I said, I wanted to know what was beyond the blue sky. But in those days, I was too young to comprehend what was going on. So to me, the animal was God. And I was experiencing God with them. That sense of oneness, there was no separation between myself and them. It did not exist. It was very physical and emotional, spiritual, and energetic too. And that's the truth, You will realize that if you haven't realized that, I'm not saying you, I'm saying all who are listening, everyone, not one, you in particular, when you are going through huge spiritual awakening and you start experiencing samadhi, you will experience that sense of oneness, what it is, and you will see there is no boundaries. All those boundaries is self-created. That's separation. It's an illusion.
Yeah, it's really interesting how just expansive this all can be when we dive into it. And my goodness, I wish we had more time because you're such a gifted individual, and I really appreciate the time that you've been spending with us, Vivianne. Where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community?
It goes so fast. I can't believe it. I know we're coming today, and I love people to come visit my website, vivianne-nantel.com. My last name is spelled N as Nancy, A, N as Nancy, T as Thomas, E, L, Nantel, Vivianne, Vivianne. So vivianne-nantel.com. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. My Facebook, I have a public figure page, and I post all kind of different things. It's about raising consciousness, and some of my videos as well, where I have certain subject on spirituality, small videos, and Instagram, and come and visit, and I hope you will read and dwell into becoming the light, realize your true enlightened nature, and dwell deeply within your being, because reading this book could really open up a gateway to many of our listeners to find so many insight. And it will resonate with each one of you differently, because everyone are on a different level. And again, when I mean level, it's not a matter of hierarchy, or because there is no such a thing as low and high, and that doesn't exist on the spiritual path. There's no competition. That's also another illusion. What I mean by that is it will just resonate with where you are in your life, and it will open differently a door. And it's up to you what you want to do with it. It can be incredibly empowering. And it could be the beginning of a spiritual process for you.
Yeah, a whole new journey. Well, Vivianne, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Oh, what a blessing. It's a pleasure, and a same blessing to all of you, and you, Marianne. What a gracious host you are. I'm so honored. Thank you so much. It was fabulous, and it would be great to have a few hours more, definitely, but I'm so grateful for this time.
Well, thank you, Vivianne. It's been such a delightful time talking with you about your new book, Becoming the Light. Now, Becoming the Light's available at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and all indie bookstores. And if they don't have it on the shelf, just ask for them to order it and they'll get it right to you. Again, you can reach Vivianne at her website, viviannantel.com. We'll have the link below, and also her book in our book club at moments-with-marianne.com. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.